Buenos dias. Hey, what's happening? It's Robert Phoenix here, the laid-back guy from Texas. That's how I was described recently by a third party, not by a second party, but by a third party. And I'm wondering if that connotation really fits. The laid-back guy from Texas. I'll take it. How is everybody today? Welcome to another edition of 15 Minutes of Flame. And we're just getting rolling here on a brisk South Central Texas morning, and feeling very seasonal, very, very seasonal. J&P Love in the house. Hey, Jacqueline, I'm going to send you an email today, so keep your eyes on it, or open for it. Eyes open for it. 10 Dragon 14, the lovely intelligent Jonas. Bob 77, Laura D. Shannon Jones in the house. What's going on, Shannon? Nancy Harding, hello back. There's Ryan. Hey, Ryan, I'm going to send you something today in the mail. It's going out today, I promise. And then an email to you as well. Lil's in the house. What's going on, Lil's? WC Ray. Charlotte, cold. Uncle Glenn. In the USSA, yeah, right. Yep. Natasha Lloyd, there she is. Nice to see you, Natasha. I hope you're staying warm. PB, what's happening? Windy here in Kansas. Yeah, Kansas. Plains. It's like Oklahoma, where the wind comes whipping down the plains. Mark Matheny in the house. What's going on, brother? Good to see you. I'm glad you're joining us here in the morning. Presence is always welcome. There she is, Kestrel, Frank Bry, and let's see, Mary Black hanging in there. Ooh. With all this alcohol talk, I don't know, man. Hanging in there may not be the right phrase. Just saying, but I get where you're coming from. Maury, what's going on, Maury? I'm going to call you Maury. Maury as in the French version, not Maury as in the Maury Povich version. Right, Maurice. There we go. That's more French. Maurice. Bonjour. Let's see. Ursula Hauser. Oh, you better stay warm up there. I think that I don't think that the immediate environment is the only thing that's cold and chilly in your neck of the woods, Ursula. Nice to see you here. Tucker said 2 nights ago, Fox loves him and is actually expanding. I saw that. I guess Tucker made the right deal. Good for him. Good for him. America's release valve. DJ MC, what's happening? Craig Corporon. Renee, hello, Renee. Fuck Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, you got issues. You got problems, Pennsylvania. You got big problems. And if you don't figure out how to pump the brakes, you're in serious, serious trouble. Now, there was a guy who won a case basically against Governor Governor Wolf. What do you do with that guy? In Smyrna, Pennsylvania, where he kept his restaurant open. I encourage all of you to follow that lead. Hazel and Sage, good morning. My wife comes home today after 3 months in LA. Ooh, congratulations. He's excited to see his wife. How about that? Let's give that man a round of applause. Let's see. Victoria V, double V. Good to see you. Ashanti Edwards in the house. No, we have a lockdown called freeze. Oh, I see. So it is the social condition and not the environmental one. They can't lock me down. Good for you, man. Good for you. John G in the house. Nice to see you, John G. Did I miss anybody? Did I miss anyone? Oh, there's Charles. Charles is loving Mississippi Life. Maybe they should redo, maybe they should redo, or there should be another version of Mississippi Queen and call it Mississippi King, and it could be dedicated to you, Charles, because you are living large. You're living large in Mississippi. Remember that group, El Debarge? Remember that group from the 80s? with the big suits, the Debarge family. There was this saying back in the 80s, like, yeah, you're living large like El Debarge, who is the guy. I think El Debarge dated Janet Jackson for a while. I think he was on the Janet Jackson dating circuit. Governor Wolf is a robot. So you got a robot, but then you have an augmented human who is running the health program there. All right, let's see. Excessive buckles on their clothes. Should we get a visual of Debarge? Let's just take a little trip back in time. Let's get a visual of Debarge. I think this is worth just wrapping our heads around for just a moment. Debarge. Here they were. The Debarge family. Oh, they've got a biopic in the works. Biopic sounds doesn't biopic sound like a medical procedure? There you go. Let's just go right into the Google gallery for Debarge images. Where are we? There we go, right there. So where else are you going to go to get a morning cup of a triple shot of so-called truth in the morning and flashbacks with El Debarge? I don't know. There they are. This, ladies and gentlemen, used to be a thing. It used to be a thing. So we get this. Debarge. So whenever I go to get the actual link, the pictures are always much smaller. That used to be a thing right there. Style. That's a Écoutez les albums. It looks like a French site. And here they are in black and white for a little contrast. The Debarge family. Boy, there's some eccentricity running through those genes. Am I right? There's some eccentricity. They're loving it, man. They have absolutely zero judgment about who they are or their styles or their fashion or their closeness. I think it's great. I'm actually celebrating El Debarge today. Oh, calling out a sister now. That's not so good. Looking a little different these days. Bunny Debarge. Bunny Debarge. Okay, Bunny. Looks like you got a family feud going on. She's really cute there. Look at that. So it looks like the Debarge family is in some form of controversy. Man, I'm just channeling the 80s today. Those first two Prince records are off the mark. So good. So what do we know about the Debarge family? Let's just look at the Wikipedia page for the Debarge family. Let's see. There was Mark, Randy, Bunny, and Elle. James joined the group a year later for their second album. Bobby and Chico joined in 1987 and 88, replacing Bunny and Elle. Elle was too big. He was too big for Debarge. That's why he was living large, like El Debarge. So the Debarge family are the children of Robert Debarge Sr., a white man of French descent, and Etienne Debarge, née Abney, a black woman born in Michigan in 1935. Okay, so we're being very specific. We're going to be talking about critical race theory today, by the way. So this is kind of an interesting, a soft intro. They married when Etienne was 17, a year after the death of her father, James Abney, a church choir leader and peanut retailer. So as soon as Papa checked out, it's like, okay, French guy, I'm with you. Just keep talking to me like that and keep making me a few little crepes and quiches every now and then, and we're good. We're good. They separated in the mid-70s and divorced in 1974. Etienne remembers Robert Debarge Sr. as physically and emotionally abusive to her and the children, and said he used her youth, the absence of her father, and continuous pregnancy to control her. Debarge Sr. has been characterized as domineering and physically abusive to his wife. Then some of the Debarge children have accused him of sexually abused them. Sounds a little bit like the Jackson 5 story, doesn't it? Unfortunately, it rings all too familiar. Let's see, what do we have here? The group, okay, all right, we got more. Bunny Debarge, the eldest, recalls being sexually abused by him between the ages of 7 to 13. So that's never a good thing. The group, named for their shared surname, hailed from the east side of Detroit, Michigan, where the siblings were born and raised. They later relocated to Grand Rapids. Members included Bunny and brothers Max or Marty, depending upon Mark or Marty, depending on how he's feeling that day, William or Randy, Eldra or Elle, and James, younger siblings Chico, Daryl, and Carol Peaches Debarge. Boy, that's a lot of kids. That's a lot of kids. Early years of the group in Switch. Siblings who became Debarge started performing in various groups together in the Detroit, Michigan area in the mid-1970s. In 1979, brothers Randy, Mark, and Elle were part of the Smash Band, which was a release on Source Records MCA in USA, Canada, before it was released as Pall Mall Groove Hot Ice in Germany by Polydor. Bernd Lichters, who rented a home in Cerritos, California, bought them instruments, and they were mentored by members of the Motown group Switch, including their elder brothers, Tommy and Bobby, and co-founding and a member and family friend, Gregory Williams. Bunny Debarge had joined her younger brothers in 1979 as well, and they formed as the Debarges. But in a famous move, marketing move, like when they dropped the from Facebook and just became Facebook, apparently they dropped the S. That year, because of Bobby's success with Switch, younger brother Elle was able to perform live on the piano and sing for Motown CEO and founder Berry Gordy, who was impressed by the group and agreed to sign them that year. For a year, the group worked alongside of members of Switch, helping with background vocals, instrumentation, arranging, and musical and lyrical composition for the band's works. Most prominently in I Call Your Name, My Friend in the Sky, and Love Over and Over Again. By 1981, Bobby and Tommy had left Switch and returned the favor to their siblings, working with them on their debut album, which was released that year with Bobby, Bunny, and Elle as main producers. The only single, the Bobby-led ballad, What's Your Name, failed to chart. So in 1982, they added their 18-year-old brother James to the lineup and worked on their second album, All This Love, produced by Elle and Gordy. The album launched into R&B stardom with records like I Like It, All This Love. Both songs also became crossover pop hits, with All This Love later growing to number 1 in the Billboard's Adult Contemporary chart in 1983. The group made an impression after appearing on Motown 25, where they performed alongside High Energy. Later in 1983, the group issued a third album in a special way. Okay. Following the album's success, Debarge were handpicked by Luther Vandross to open for him on his Busybody tour in support of the album of the same name. Also in 1984, James Debarge made headlines when he secretly eloped with Janet Jackson. Oh, so it was James Debarge and not Elle Debarge. We got to get our Debarges right. So really, we should be talking, we're living large like James Debarge. We got to rewrite history. We have to have a Winston Smith moment. Let's see. But their marriage was quickly annulled the following year. When the tour ended in 1984, the group recorded the Diane Warner composition Rhythm of the Night. Oh, that's a big tune. For the soundtrack to the Motown-produced film, Berry Gordy's The Last Dragon. The song was released in early 1985 and became a hit single, eventually reaching top 5 in several countries, mainly in the US and UK, becoming the band's biggest selling and their best known hit. Okay, so there we go. There's a little backstory on Debarge, and it is really about James Debarge. So if you're living large, you're living large like James Debarge and not El Debarge. We have sort of reconstructed the tiny fragment of the universe. Okay, what do we got here? Belief in authority. That's a big one. That is a big one. I agree, Maurice. Some of us were rebels from the beginning. I left home at 14. Okay. You guys have a much better conversation going on than I do about El Debarge. All right, so why don't we get going here? All right, so we got a prayer request. We got a prayer request from the prayer request hotline that came through yesterday on yesterday's video, saying that we should be directly asking, directly commanding, directly manifesting that the truth be revealed. So today, with that spirit in mind, as you gaze upon the tree of knowledge, we ask that blessed and holy motherfucker God, within the light of the great central sun, which is the light of Yeshua, Sayanda, Emmanuel, that only the highest and best truth, wisdom, and information can come through this channel at this exact time. And that we ask, we lovingly command that the truth be revealed and that all love be lying, traitorous, hypocritical, agents of the lie be revealed in all of their dark, demonic manifestations, so that we may be purged of their infernal sin, the sin of ignorance, the sin of illusion, the sin of distraction, and the sin of the lie. In the name of the one, let it be done. All right. There's your morning prayer. Oh, let's see. His neighbors. Hey, listen, I got good neighbors. I get neighbors that bring me wild hog. Wild hog. Let's see. I see about the only. Oh man, I got all kinds of characters in my head. So I'll tell you a little story from the Robert Phoenix past. So I used to ride motorcycles when I was a kid, dirt bikes, and we got dropped off in this area in San Jose. It was me and I think two of my friends, and we had dirt bikes. And we were riding around, and it was a very small area. It was getting really boring. So none of us had licenses, and none of us, we were young, I think 14 maybe. And the dirt bikes were not enduro, so they weren't street legal or anything. But I decided I'm going to get this sucker up on the street because I want to open it up. So we're riding these dirt bikes on the street, and we get pulled over by a highway patrolman because they had a highway patrol office down by this area in San Jose. So I started talking to this guy, and I don't know what possessed me to do this. I guess possess is probably the operative word here. I started talking to him in a fake German accent. I just started talking to him in a fake German accent. Like, I didn't know what was the kind of the law of the land. And I swear to God, the guy bought it. He totally bought it. And then kind of let us go. It was just a thing. I'm sorry. So it was one of those characters in my head. Let's see what do we got here. You sounded just like Foghorn Leghorn. That's, you know what? Sometimes you just gotta, go back to those really important inspirational sources from your youth, and Foghorn Leghorn is definitely one of them. You know what's really interesting is that the creators of those great comics, guys like Mel Blanc, Michael Maltese, and I think Raymond Scott, who did a lot of the soundtracks. They were all born in the same year. They were all, so I'm taking you down another rabbit hole. We'll get to the meat of the show. Let's see. I know that Mel Blanc. I'm going to show you. It's really interesting. Like the kind of the kings of animation were all born in the same year, and that year was 1927. And I think it's fascinating how sort of these groups of people kind of incarnate together, because if they're not all kind of in the same time zone, literally and figuratively, the whole like animation cartoon world maybe doesn't happen in the same way. It's kind of like how Ray Kroc and Walt Disney were from the same town in Illinois. Ray Kroc, of course, being the founder of McDonald's. I'm not sure if that's such a good thing on either front. All right, so the birthdays really quickly. Okay, so just to confirm this, okay, we got Eartha Kitt. She's funny. Ronnie Scott, the great jazz musician. Stan Getz, another jazz musician. Olaf Palme. There's some giants born here in 1927. Leon Price. How about that? Roy Cohn. Oh, Roy Cohn. Roy Cohn and Sidney Poitier born on the same day. How's that for some? There's John Warner, who became Elizabeth Taylor's husband. Let's see. Ralph Stanley, the bluegrass. Man, there are some like major people born in 1927. Jack Cassidy, David Cassidy's father. Gordon Cooper, the astronaut. What else we have here? Cesar Chavez, 1927. Holy smokes, Jerry Mulligan. Whether you like these people or not, whether you chime in with them or not, these are some pretty significant and major people. Coretta Scott King, 1927. Oh, let's see. Who else we have? Mort Saul. Actually, very funny. Mort Saul was very funny. Clint Walker, the actor. Slim Dusty. That's an Australian country singer. That is a great name. Slim Dusty. Bob Fosse. I'm a huge Bob Fosse fan. 1927. Holy smokes, man. Let's see, who else do we have? Leo Klein. Gina Lollobrigida. Neil Simon. Janet Leigh. Man, this is a veritable who's who. David Dinkins. David Dinkins was a model for the future politician. We just didn't know it. Kurt Maser, the German conductor. Holy smokes. Lots of people here. The slimy Edwin Edwards, who put an end to Eddie DeBartolo's ownership of, actually Eddie did it himself. Marvin Minsky, the computer scientist. Robert Shaw, you know who Robert Shaw is. Mr. Jaws, Robert Shaw. Okay. What else we got? Paul Volcker. Now, that'd be somebody you'd like to go back in time and have a different kind of relationship with that man's life, I think. Freddie Jones, the English actor. Peter Falk. This is an amazing year. Absolutely amazing year, 1927. Holy smokes. All right, I'm gonna abandon this because I can't not find the Blanc and Michael Maltese. But they're there. They're all the same year. You got to trust me on this. You got to trust me. At least we got that out of the way. You had an interesting sort of detour. All right, so what do I want to talk about today? All right, I'm going to start with this story because we are knocking on hell's door. I'm just being straight up with you. I was thinking about fear today and how we ascribe a very significant value to love, which I think is important because love is the thing that binds, love is the force that binds all things together. This is why they want social distancing. This is why they want, diapers across your face, because it decreases the potential for love. And it decreases the binding force that keeps us all together. And really, this is sort of the denouement of something that they've been working on for a very long time, meaning that the social standard, I suppose, or the social condition has been socially engineered to get people to a point where they would actually accept the mask. You see, that's the important thing to understand, is that the mask is just that final piece of a very complicated and Byzantine puzzle that locks the human into a prison of their own making. So the mask isn't just, the mask is really a symbol of the thing that ultimately they had been creating for a very long time. So one of the things that I've thought about with the mask, and I'm going to get back to fear. One of the things that I thought about with the mask, and I've said this before, so if you've heard it, indulge me. If you haven't, then you may want to think about it, is that most people have a very difficult time accepting themselves. And a lot of people run around with unexamined relationships with shame, judgment, and guilt. So as a result of that, the mask is actually a friend, not a foe. A mask is an ally. A mask is, in some ways, a kind of a synthetic spirit totem for that person, because what it does is it takes them off the hook. That whatever is unresolved inside of themselves, they don't have to be in the world and carry it around. They don't have to look into somebody's eyes and fear that they'll be seen, fear that whatever tiny little secret, whatever blemish, whatever mark, whatever piece of toxic matter that has stuck to them in their life, sometimes not even as a result of their own actions, but perhaps the actions of another, that those unresolved pieces, and we all have them, by the way, we all have them, those unresolved pieces, let's hope that you have less than others if you're watching this. And let's hope and let's encourage you to resolve those things. These are the foundations of being sovereign. When you understand that, then the language stuff is secondary or tertiary. So these people now have an ally, and the ally is the mask, because it allows them, and this is ironic if you think about it, it allows them to actually breathe freely in public. Think about that for a second. They can breathe freely with a mask. Well, why? Because it's a metaphor. Breath is a metaphor here. And it's like they don't have to. Now, not everybody's in this category. Some people are just, trying to go along to get along. And some people, man, the stockyards, they're packed with cows right now. It's packed with cows. Every now and then you'd hear the sort of the plaintive cry of a solo cow or two. Oh no, oh no, not in the last 24 hours. It has been a roaring bovine ohm coming out of that stockyard. And that's a symbol. A lot of people are really they're just cows. Sorry. They are. It's okay. A cow can lead a good, happy life. In the right place, in the right context, the right farm. Boy, you're a milker, man. You got a good life. You get all that pressure removed, right? You every now and then you get to breed, and if you're the guy cow in that area, you got a good life. You're just breeding the milkers. I mean, let's put it all in context. But not every cow has a good life. A lot of cows wind up on somebody's grill. Okay, so that said, if you are one of these cows and you do have unresolved issues, or if you're not a cow and you have an unresolved issue, the mask is your friend. You don't have to be in public to be seen. All you're missing now at that point are some dark glasses, because God forbid you want anybody looking into your eyes. So I think there's a reason why people have been eager to embrace their masked up reality. And the reason is because they have been, all those leaves. They have been socially engineered to do it. Been socially engineered. And this goes on over a long period of time. And the social engineering is both overt and covert, meaning that pretty much everybody I know or clients that I've worked with, their family situations, not ideal. Not ideal. Every now and then I'll run across somebody, I had a loving father and I had a loving mother. And those things do happen, by the way. They're probably more rare than not. And then there's the second group, which is they did the best they could. And that's not necessarily bad or good. Sometimes there was great good, and sometimes there was great not so good. But they did the best they could. And then the third group is, cue up the animals. We got to get out of this place. And a lot of the people, I would say that the majority falls in category 3 and 2, with a fair amount of 2 and a whole lot of 3. So the social engineering begins with the broken and challenged and toxic conditions that families in this country, I'm just going to use this country, and I've talked to people from other countries too. And I've talked to people from Germany, and I've talked to people from England, and I've talked to people from Ireland, and there is a common thread there. And they've had their own difficulties with their family upbringing. So you've got that level of trauma, and that is an indirect form of social engineering. Let's create the social condition so that people inside the modern family will be this kind of nexus point, or this trauma point for whatever else we want to kind of fill in or pour in to that experience. And I've been on record by saying that the Great Depression was one of the, I think, most devastating things that happened to this country and the world at large. It was brutal, absolutely brutal, because it set in motion a psychic and genetic wave and marker that would follow people through their basically birth cycle, through their lineage. So for instance, if you had parents that were raised during the Depression, there's a really good chance that those parents who were raised during the Depression got zero love or very little love. And maybe they got the best that they could. That's another model, right? So my parents were raised by Depression era parents, and they got zilch. Like, their childhoods were very difficult. Very, very difficult. So love as a commodity, love as a life force love as a factor was very limited in their upbringing. So they were impoverished. They were emotionally impoverished. Then what happens? You get two emotionally impoverished people. And I love my parents, don't get me wrong. You get two emotionally impoverished people together. How are they going to fill one another's cup? And when they fill one another's cup, what are they going to fill it with at that point? And I went through their process as a child. I went through their process. I saw what they did. I saw what they were struggling with. I saw it early on. And I made the connections to their family and their upbringing. I mean, I was getting this picture when I was 12, 13 years old. It took me a while to step back, but I saw it, right? And eventually, if they did their work, then, and I would say that probably my father did more than my mother in some ways. She did her work later on after that. My mother's best years, really, I have to say, are post my father in some ways. And it's because of the quality of life that she has chosen for herself. My father worked on himself, and I think he conquered a lot of his demons. My mother was sort of held in a state of cryogenesis. But they were able to kind of turn things around, albeit not necessarily together and not necessarily in the same time. But their experience is passed on to me. And then my experience is passed on. You get the picture, right? And everybody has a connection to this moment in time. Not everybody, however's parents had to go through that depression. Not. Some parents actually made it through okay, but by and large, it is a big factor. So you have this kind of Nagasaki moment across the planet that affects both socioeconomic and affects the emotional bonds. And we're going through one right now. We're absolutely going through another Great Depression right now, which is really unfortunate because we're going to have these kids, these Pluto and Capricorn kids, and some of these Zoomer kids, they're actually being denied access in a time where theoretically we would have more material abundance than in any other time, that the emotional or the familial abundance that would go along with that is being strangulated. It's being literally blocked off and choked off. So the seeds of this trauma that I'm talking about really have its roots in the Great Depression. And then as we move through time, like it took me quite a while. I completely rejected my parents' relationship with materialism because they loved, I remember at least 2 times, and there probably were more, but they made a big deal of cutting up their credit cards because that's how they lived. And those credit cards brought them a great deal of stress. And I saw that. To this day, I do not have a credit card. I don't buy anything on credit. If I can't afford it, I don't buy it. And I've kind of learned with that. It makes my life easier. I'm not the greatest with payments, by the way, but it makes my life easier. I just control what I can control. So I saw this and I rejected that outright. And so when you go through that process, you can do one of 2 things. You can either overcorrect and say, I'm not going to be poor. This is Saturn in the 2nd house, if you're paying attention with astrology. If you're not going to be poor, then I'm going to over exceed their limitations. I'm going to have so much that I'm going to not give a shit about money. I went the opposite way. I rejected materialism and wanted to live my life as free from it as possible. Now, that said, in these past years, I've come to understand that it's not a bad thing to have resources. And I still am working through that kind of factor and that kind of dynamic in my life. So we all have a story, and the story really has to do with these things that we have inherited, either through the family or through the social condition. And the social condition can only affect you when your psychic and your emotional and your intellectual immune systems are low. Psychic, emotional, intellectual, physical spiritual immune systems, if all those are threatened, if they're all in a place of being compromised, then guess what happens? The bots come in. The social conditioned bots come in, and then they begin to attach themselves to you. And then you begin to believe things that are external of your own experience. And sometimes we think that these things can actually help us. You know, like there was a time where I was very into this idea of the new age. And I still believe, by the way, that there will be a time on this planet where we will reassemble into something that resembles more of the human experience that we theoretically would do quite well to re-embrace. And even beyond that, when we had Jared Sullivan on the show, on Jared Murphy on Friday, we began to touch in and tap into the idea of the metahuman, which I think is really where we need to go. We have to go to the metahuman, and not Klaus Schwab's version of the metahuman. Okay, that's the synthetic replacement. And a lot of people will, you know, just like McDonald's, will just roll up and they'll go get it. But if your immunity is compromised, these things will attach themselves to you. And even an idea like the New Age that theoretically sounded good on the surface, but was filled with a lot of sort of themes of ultimately disempowerment. Oh, I don't want to go there. Oh, that's too dark. That's too negative. We don't want to talk about anything negative. Let's just ban all the negative talk. That's disempowering. That is totally disempowering. Why? Because when you do that, you're shutting yourself off. You're shutting yourself off from a real examination of the dark stuff. The stuff that allows you to say, I'm not wearing a fucking mask. Right? You have to come to terms with that. And the New Age, while there were some interesting things that came through there, I mean, there's, you know, you go and listen to somebody like Fred Allen Wolf talk about quantum physics, and man, that's fucking interesting. You know, there were some really great minds that came through that time. That said, the distillation of the worst parts of it, I think, are now showing up. You don't want to talk about anything negative. No negative talk. No negative talk. No negative chatter. Not allowed. Not allowed. If you post something on social media that's negative, you're not going to have a job. You're not going to be allowed to work here. Why? It's because those people who are telling you that, they haven't worked through their shit. They haven't worked through their shit. And they've been living with a mask on their face their entire life. And now they're happy. Now they're happy because they get to look around and say, look at you. Look at you, motherfuckers. You get to wear the mask now too. Oh, isn't that good? Well, I'm going to make life real hard for you. I'm not going to accept you in. I'm not going to give you a big hug and welcome to the family. Not yet. Not yet. You're going to have to work for that. You do the things that I say. You do the things that I tell you to do. Maybe I'll give you a little hug. Maybe I'll give you a little community, a little family. Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Do what I tell you to do and like it. This is the problem. Most people have not been able to deal with the things inside that make wearing that mask so damn easy. It covers it up. It covers it up. So they're willing to put the mask on they're willing to put the mask on, more than willing to put the mask on. And then there's the justification for the mask, the rationalization as to why. Oh, well, if I don't do it, somebody might really get sick and die. If I don't do it, I won't be honoring the community. If I don't do it, I'm going to get pressure from my neighbor. right? All these things. If I don't do it, some authority might tell me that I really need to do it, and I don't want to get in trouble. How many people really got in trouble? You know, I got a lot of trouble when I was a kid. I did. I was the parent conference kid, parent teacher conference kid. I was that kid. So, you know, I got my trouble out of the way. I think a lot of people who did not get in trouble are more than willing to wear a fucking mask. They're more than willing to wear a mask. They have sided with Saturn. They have checked the Saturnian boxes. Check. I'm just going to do what I'm told. I'm going to go to the right school. I'm going to get the right degree. I'm going to marry the right person. I'm going to buy the right car. I'm going to go to the right church. You know, they just check those boxes. But at some point you have to break. You have to break with that. You have to break, and you have to become more Uranian. And right now, with Chiron and Aries, what do we have? We have this battle between Saturn and Uranus over the manifestation and the implication of the personal will. So if you're somebody who has been Saturnian for most of your life, well, guess what? This is a time for you to take up your Uranian self. And if you've been a Uranian person most of your life, guess what? You can be a little more Saturnian, more structure, more order. Why? Because Aries is the primary, it is the first sign, and it is the primary manifestation of the chart. It represents the self, and Aries is the will. And it is pure will, unmanifest until action occurs through the volition of action. And this is something that connects all of us, right? When we get into the outer signs, say like Capricorn or Pisces or Sagittarius, there's layers of interpretation that go along with those signs. Not with Aries. Not with Aries. It connects it to every single one of us, right? Every single one of us. That's why we're in a critical phase right now, very critical phase. And we have to figure out how we can reassemble our will. And it is so vitally important. Vitally important. All right, let me show you something here. And this is somebody who's reassembling their will. Not one of my favorite people, by the way. Let's just say that. Let me see if I can find this thing. Here it is, right here. Hold on. All right. So here's somebody who has put the mask on for a very long time. And she's been amply rewarded for wearing a theoretical mask. Megyn Kelly yanks kids out of New York City school over call to reform white children. Not just children, white children. And now she and her family are leaving the city altogether. So it took, everybody has their event horizon, right? There is the event horizon moment. So this was her event horizon. Everything up to now, everything that's gone along. And this is somebody who you would think would be political and informed. I know for a fact she's a Scorpio. So you would think that she would dive into things deeply. Well, Scorpios are also into power. So she sided on the power side. And now she's going to have to side on the not so much power side and into the death and transformation side of her sign. So let's read this. Veteran news journalist media maven Megyn Kelly has pulled her children out of their New York City school and plans to leave the city behind altogether. Kelly announced the decision after learning that her kid's school promoted the reform of white children in racially biased practices. Kelly did not reveal the name of the school her children previously attended. During Monday's broadcast of her podcast, The Megyn Kelly Show, Kelly said that she received a letter from the administrators of her two young sons' school that detailed a plan to implement an extreme racial social justice agenda in the school. It's so out of control on so many levels. After years of resisting it, we're going to leave the city. Kelly admitted. So I guess she had to have her two young kids get into school, be a parent, and watch the social engineering and an extreme version of it at that be put into practice. Kelly admitted, we pulled our boys from their school and our daughter is going to be leaving her soon, too. The schools have always been far left. Well, why do you have your kids in a fucking far left school? Why? That to me is just stupid. Stupid. What do you, I mean, okay. So maybe the people in her industry, maybe I guarantee you Jeffrey Zucker's kids would not be going to school with her kid. But maybe people in the industry, the important people, maybe their kids go to that school. Maybe that's why she sent her kids there, because it would advance her career and her social standing. I remember hearing, this is an extreme example, but I knew this guy in Hollywood, and he was telling me that he knew parents that shipped their kids off to Neverland with Michael Jackson. And he would ask them, why are you letting your kids go to Neverland? Well, it's Michael Jackson. You don't say no. You don't say no because no, he's powerful and who knows, he might be able to help us and blah, 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 right? It's the same deal. Kelly added, however, that the final straw was when she found out the administration was peddling concerning sentiments about how white children are left unchecked and unbothered in their schools, homes, and communities. I'm not offended at all by the ideology. Why aren't you? Why aren't you offended by that? And I mean, I lead left center on something, but they've gone around. Okay, so she's not offended by the progressive left. You're getting a wake-up call. You are getting a wake-up call. And if you are a so-called progressive, liberal, Democrat, you're going to get a big wake-up call. Somebody's going to hand you a cup of coffee one day. And you're going to sip it. You're going to realize it's not coffee. So now she's getting it. I'm not offended at all by the idea. She's saying that so she can continue to collect a paycheck. I mean, they have gone off the deep end. The summer in the wake of George Floyd, they circulated amongst the diversity group. They had a diversity group in her school, which includes white parents like us. Oh, okay. There are people who want to be allies and stay tuned to what we can do. What does that mean? What the fuck does that mean? Does that mean that there are people inside of that group apart from her who are an ally, or is she an ally? And why? It's like, why would you want to be an ally? Why would you want to be an ally to the hostile takeover of your children's minds? I guess she's figuring it out now. All right, here we go. An article, and afterwards they recirculated it and wanted every member of the faculty to read it. Kelly recalled the article asserted that white children are inherently racist. According to Kelly, a portion of the article, which appears to have been written by Nalia Weber, executive director of Orleans Public Education Network in June, said there was a killer cop sitting in every school where white children learn. They gleefully soak in their whitewashed history that downplays the Holocaust of indigenous native peoples and Africans in the Americas. They happily believe their all white spaces exist as a matter of personal effort and willingly use violence. Where is it? You hear it? You can see it. Where is it? You can hear it. Oh, there it is. To my right. It wasn't black. It was a white helicopter. Imagine that. Okay, here we go. Let me get back to this. As black bodies drop like flies around us by violence at white hands, how can we, in any of our minds, conclude that whites are all right? The article added, white children are left unchecked and unbothered in their schools, homes, and communities to join, advance, and protect systems that take away black life. I am tired of white people revealing in their state of state-sanctioned depravity, snuffing out black life with no consequences. Oh my God. So apparently it took this for Megyn Kelly to get off of her her ass and figure out that these people are not her allies. Finally. I've never been a racist a day in my life until people started telling me that. It's part of the social engineering, right? It's part of the social engineering. If you, and listen, most people, look, we all deal with some form of prejudice. Okay, I'm going to be upfront with that. We all deal with some form of prejudice. That's true. All right. But when prejudice, however, when examined, prejudice can be dissolved and resolved through understanding, right? It can happen. Right. That said, even though we ever, and when I say prejudice, it doesn't necessarily always mean a racial prejudice. There can be other prejudices. And sometimes they're okay. Sometimes we don't understand why, but sometimes they're okay. I don't know why. Well, I do know why. I can venture to guess. I'll give you a moment. I'll give you a moment. Like, for whatever reason, I like really, if I was like dating somebody who was like really skinny, it freaked me out. It freaked me out. Like I couldn't deal with a really skinny person. So I would say that I had a prejudice against really skinny people because they just freaked me out. Right. Thin, okay. Skinny, really skinny, man, that's like, you know. So that's an example of prejudice. So what does that mean? Well, it means that maybe somewhere in my head, I'm thinking, gee, if I want to procreate and I want to have kids, that somebody maybe with a little, meat on their bones is going to be able to, I don't know, give my kids more milk or something like that, right? So maybe it's a biological prejudice that's already built into me. I don't know. Maybe that's it. So sometimes these things have a reason as to why they exist. Other times they're unfounded fears. That's life. That's life. You have to navigate through this stuff and, try to understand why to the best of your ability. But that said, I have not met a whole lot of racist people in my life. And if they were racist, they didn't really share their racial, prejudice with me. So what they've done is they've used critical race theory, and I'm going to show you where it comes from. And we've talked about it before. They've used it as the hammer, right? They've used it as the hammer. Now, the hammer is also a symbol of the former Soviet Union. Now, a lot of people think, well, the hammer is just a tool that, it's about working, working for Mother Russia, right? The hammer is also a metaphor. They're going to hammer you. They're going to hammer you into submission. And then what is the other symbol of the Soviet Union? It's the sickle. And a lot of people, well, you use a sickle to, harvest the crops. Well, you also use a sickle to, lop somebody's head off. The hammer and the sickle, those are the symbols. Remember that. So where does critical race theory come from? Well, let's just go over this one more time and look at the roots of critical race theory. This is William C. Lind, Traditional Rights. This is the website. To his great credit, President Trump recently ordered an end to anti-racism training for federal employees and contractors. A number of articles discussing his actions referred to critical race theory. Yeah, basically he said you're not going to have critical race theory involved in any government departments like Sandia. Critical race theory is a subset of critical theory, which in turn is a central element in cultural Marxism. Like the bulk of that hideous ideology, it was created by the Frankfurt School, formerly the Institute for Social Research. Now, the Crimis did a great job on the Frankfurt School. I'm going to put a link in today's show for that interview that we did together, or that show we did together. When Hitler came to power, the Frankfurt School relocated to New York City, where it remained until 1947 when we returned to Frankfurt. Do you think all of the Frankfurt schoolers left? I don't think so. The Frankfurt School translated Marxism from economic into cultural terms. The Frankfurt School's primary goal was to destroy Western culture, which it defined as oppressive. Critical theory is a tool to that end. The term is something of a play on words. What is theory? The theory is to criticize. By submitting every aspect of Western culture to constant, unremitting criticism, it would be discredited to the point where people would abandon the ways of thinking and living and embodied. What would replace them? The Frankfurt School refused to answer that question, although one of its key members, Herbert Marcuse, promised a world of all play and no work. In the 1960s, college students in large numbers believed that promise. Marcuse was very big, very, very big in the 60s, which is the philosophical equivalent of buying the Brooklyn Bridge. Critical theory now wells up around us in many different forms. Feminism endlessly criticizes the family, marriage, and traditional definitions of men's and women's roles. Education theory demands children be taught certain attitudes, including disrespect for parents and elders, rather than skills or facts. Critical race theory says that all whites are inherently evil, racist, and oppressors, regardless of what individuals do. It demands whites grovel at the feet of blacks, endlessly apologizing for discrimination and white privilege. Even if whites do what it demands, critical race theory continues to denounce them. Like the rest of critical theory, its demands can never be satisfied because then the criticism would end. Remember, the theory is to criticize. Let me repeat that. The theory is to criticize endlessly, relentlessly, until any defenders of Western culture or traditional ways of living are silenced, canceled, or liquidated. Critical theory in all its forms says that its goal is equality. This goal can never be achieved because nature has made people unequal. So the criticism must go on forever. But cultural Marxism's desire for equality is also a lie. What it actually seeks to do is invert all existing relationships that have evolved over many generations and reflect reality, whatever that is. Inversion includes putting blacks over white, women over men, and gays over straights. That was exactly what the anti-racism training President Trump canceled was about. Whites were to crawl on their bellies before blacks, submitting themselves to whatever demands blacks made of them. And by the way, when I say this has nothing to do with so-called black or African American people or black European people or black African. It has nothing to do with that. So let me be clear about that. This is an institutional putsch, an absolute institutional putsch, which uses and pits people against one another. This critical theory is intrinsic in the divide and conquer strategy. Okay? It pits us against one another. And it uses whatever the so-called underclass or aggrieved member of society is. If you go to the Bolshevik Revolution, what did they do? They went after the workers because the workers were the underclass. It was class theory. Here, where the idea of class has been pretty much dissolved. pretty much dissolved. Like, they had to go after something else. So they went after race versus class. Because you can be somebody, let's say, like Van Jones. Van Jones is doing pretty well for himself. Van Jones. What about Joy Reid? Joy Reid is doing really well for him. What about Lori Lightfoot? Lori Lightfoot's a mayor of one of the biggest and most powerful cities in the world. And yet, they exhibit the characteristics on someone who's aggrieved. They're making a lot of money. They have a significant amount of power, and yet it is not enough. It is not the plank from which they operate from. Their aggrieved status has nothing to do with their class, and they're using critical race theory to be able to move a program forward. This is exactly what's happening. So I'm not here to single out this in terms of a racial divide. I'm actually singling this out as the thing that creates the racial divide. We need to come together. We need to pull together, okay? We need to pull together. And that's not just, us white people. No, we all need to pull together. Because guess what will happen? Guess what will happen? If this thing goes as planned, a certain group will be demonized, and then they will be, guess what? They will be walked right off the stage. And then who's next? Who's after that? Who's left after that? No. And eventually, and we've seen this with the left, they eat their own. They are the Ouroboros. They are the social, economic version of the Ouroboros, and they will eat themselves. They will consume themselves. Until, guess what? There's nothing left. There's nothing left. The parasitic virus will have just cleaned the meat off of the bones of humanity. We'll move on to another planet. The essence of critical theory is that it can never be satisfied. So why should we try? If cultural Marxists denounce us as racist, sexist, or homophobes, who cares? Their boogeyman words have no real power, and they're all lies. Men and women are inherently different. Their traditional social roles reflect their inborn differences. There are differences among races and ethnic groups. Absolutely there are. Absolutely there are. And to suggest that would otherwise is folly. But really, true diversity would look at that and embrace that instead of, constructing this mind fuck, which says, well, we've got to, celebrate diversity, but we cannot focus on the intrinsic qualities of each group within the field of diversity. You can't do that. You can't do it. And you best not criticize it, because guess what? There's only one group that allows critical theory. Only one group. Everybody else, that's racist. Okay. President Trump, blah, 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 blah. Okay. I'm going to jump off of this. I'm just trying to give you a background on the roots of critical race theory. And the challenge here is that, if you have a grievance, and a lot of people do, by the way, a lot of people do. And if you have a grievance, if you've been mistreated, if you've been stereotyped, if you've been shut out for whatever reason, and something comes along, says, hey, want to get even? Want to get even? Come on. I'll show you how. I'll give you the tools. It would take a very, very strong individual to say no. Very strong individual. Say, you know what? Thank you very much. Yep. I've experienced racism. I've experienced prejudice. I've experienced bigotry, but I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to take the bait. I am not going to embrace an ideology of hate and revenge. So, go on down the line. Go find somebody else. It takes a really strong individual to do that. And a lot of individuals, I hate to say it, are weak. They're weak. And why are they weak? It goes back to what I was talking about. It goes back to the trauma. It goes back to the things that they haven't resolved or dealt with. And then guess what? You either put on a mask or you're the person that puts the mask on another person and then zip ties it to the back of their head. Okay? And this is where we are now. This is how society is de-evolving. Predator and prey. Perpetrator, victim. And it's very black and white. So we have to be able to transcend these conditions. We have to really rise up and come together in the name of freedom and truth, in the name of love, in the name of the generations that are yet to come. We cannot let the Klaus Schwabs of the world win. We cannot. These people cannot be victorious. They cannot succeed. They can't. This is where fear comes into play. If you are not sniffing fear right now around this, because I told you I'd get back to fear. If you're not sniffing fear around this, you are not alive. You are not awake, and you better do a reality check. That's a motivator, right? You're Bambi in the forest, and the forest is on fire, and you're smelling the smoke. You're an animal in the forest, and you're feeling the earth begin to tremble. You know there's an earthquake coming, even though the bipeds don't have a fucking clue, right? You better figure that out, and you've got to do everything in your power now, and that's all of us. That's not just one group. It's not just one group. We have to come together. This is the true Aquarian age. I mean, if we're going to talk about the Jupiter and Saturn conjunction on the 21st, a great conjunction, it is really the time for all of us to look at what's going on. Do we want to have fucking chips in our head? Do you really want to have a chip in your head? Do you want to take whatever vaccine du jour is being offered up to you every 4 months so you can go walk around somewhere with a bunch of other zombies just because you have a card or a passport? Do you really want that? And I hope you share this video with some people, and hopefully it will stay up. I don't think I've said anything really damning, but you never know. Do you want that reality? If you don't want that reality, you better start really doing everything in your power to monkey wrench that reality. And again, I think the best strategy here is to really talk about the Great Reset, Klaus Schwab, the Fourth Industrial Revolution. You break it down. You tell that to people. People don't know what the fuck is going on. They've never heard of the Fourth Industrial. Klaus Schwab, isn't that guy a guy who's on TV? Isn't that the investment guy? No, that's Charles Schwab. Interesting, huh? I want to show you how insidious. God, can I find that thing? Where was that? Okay, it was. I won't find the actual web page, but I was reading a story about the Denver Broncos and their coach Vic Fangio. And Vic is a good guy. He's old school. He's an old school football coach. I like Vic. And the writer of the story was about coaches on a hot seat. And he was writing about Vic Fangio. And he was essentially saying that his record was the same record as the previous coach, Vance Joseph, who was run out of Denver. And he said, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. What the writer was doing was he was essentially saying that Vance Joseph was kicked out of Denver because he was black. That's what he was saying. That's what he was inferring in that comment. Let me tell you something. Vance Joseph was an abysmal coach. He was terrible. I've watched a lot of football. I've never seen anybody as flustered and disorganized, both on and off the field, on the sidelines in the press conferences than Vance Joseph. He deserved to get fired. He is not head coach material. Okay, not head coach material. But this guy's going to, nudge, nudge, wink, wink you into thinking, oh, guess what? The Denver Broncos are racist. That is the subtext. The Denver Broncos are racist. John Elway's a racist. John Elway's a Mason. I don't know if he's a racist. I'm not a huge John Elway fan. I'm not here to defend John Elway. But to say that they canned him because he was black and hired another coach who was white is a sign that they're secretly practicing racism in the Mile High City is ridiculous. Vance Joseph, he sucked. Bottom line. Okay. I wanted to play you something from Steve Bannon. I'm hitting all the right marks today, aren't I? It's not really Steve Bannon. It's actually a bit of video from Steve Bannon. He's going to find it. So while we are trying to sort out who the president-elect is and who the president is or isn't, there were hearings that were going on yesterday, not really in Capitol Hill because nobody gets together anymore. We live in Zoom land or Skypeville, and so they're doing this dog and pony show once again about Section 230. Let me see. I got to cue this thing up. I had it there. It's right here. Okay, they're doing the same about Section 230, which basically says that internet services, social media networks, YouTube, Twitter, you know who they are, that they are platforms and not publishers. And as platforms, they do not have to follow the Constitution. They are literally exempt from the Constitution, meaning free speech does not have to be a thing. If they were publishers, that would be a wholly different story. Although apparently the New York Times has skirted that issue, become a platform somehow. Let me show you this interview with Dick Blumenthal and Mark Zuckerberg. And this is what happens in a repressive society where they are not only satisfied with the gains of truncating individuals' free speech on these social platforms. Now we are looking at strong-arming the people who actually run these companies into banning certain people. Watch this. This will kind of blow your mind. Dick Blumenthal giving Mark Zuckerberg his marching orders. Here we go.
Facebook Live video called for beheadings.
Hold on. Let me get out of this LifeLock thing. Quick. There's Bannon. Did I miss it? No, I think I had it there in a second. There it is. Right here. Okay, here we go. So he's referring to, he didn't call for beheadings. He did not call. Steve Bannon was talking, well, I think he was talking about this metaphorically, where he said, metaphorically speaking, that he would put Fauci and Chris Wray's heads on spikes outside of the White House. I actually, look, he's a Sagittarius and he has dark humor. I actually thought it was kind of funny, actually. But it was a metaphor. Metaphor. Dick didn't get that. Here we go.
Facebook community standards, which ban language that, quote, incites or facilitates serious violence. As you know, on November 5th, Steve Bannon, in a Facebook Live video, called for beheadings of Dr. Fauci and FBI director.
Oh, sorry. How did this happen? I do not want the fucking Pat McAfee show. I like
campaign. So I want to bring you on
Yeah, we got some interesting things happening here, don't we? You not want the Pat McAfee show. Give me a second. I apologize. Yes, Steve Cortez, you have interesting things to say. This is not about your segment. That's why we're in trouble right there. Hold on now. Now I got to go back. Find that moment in time. There's Steve Cortez. I apologize, but we had it there, and he didn't have it. And he's got a nice picture of that traitor Winston fucking Churchill. I don't know if I trust that guy. It's weird how people have historical figures that they're into. No. I think it's right here. Should be here now. Gotta find this thing. Come on. A little bit further. Oh, here we go. That's where we want to be. LifeLock, you should throw me a bone. All right, right. We just saw that guy. There's Mike Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg. We're almost there. Thanks for your patience. All right, let's go. Here we go.
You removed the video, Mr. Zuckerberg, but on Thursday, you reportedly told Facebook employees that Bannon had not violated enough policies that he should be banned from Facebook. My question to you is, how many times has Steve Bannon allowed the call for the murder of government officials before Facebook suspends his account?
Senator, as you say, the content in question did violate our policies and we took it down. Having a content violation does not automatically mean your account gets taken down, and the number of strikes varies depending on the type of offense. So if people are posting terrorist content or child exploitation content, then the first time that they do it, then we will take down their account. For other things, it's multiple. I'd be happy to follow up afterwards. We try not to disclose these.
Down his account.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Will you commit to taking down that account, Steve Bannon's account?
Senator, no, that's not what our policies would suggest that we should do in this case.
So, whatever you think of Mark Zuckerberg, maybe he'll take it down later, but he actually pushed back. But you see how that works? They're not just satisfied with the removal of offensive content. And that, by the way, is very subjective. They just want to say, will you commit to taking down his... Are you going to commit to that? Like right here, right now. You're going to commit to that. Now, I'm going to show you another interview. Actually, it's a grilling session without barbecue sauce with Josh Hawley. And I'm not going to play the whole thing, but he puts Zuckerberg under the heat lamp. And all he's asking Zuckerberg to produce is information. He is not trying to get somebody banned. What he's trying to do is learn more about their operation, what goes on behind the scenes, and how it impacts how people share information. It's a very different thing than demanding somebody ban somebody and ban their content in a Senate hearing or congressional hearing. Hawley's a congressman, right? So I think it's the Senate. Okay, here we go. My bad. All right, so here's Josh Hawley, who I think is actually pretty impressive in his own way. Watch him.
Well, I'm talking about content moderation. I'm talking about individuals, websites, hashtags, phrases to ban. Is it your testimony that you do not communicate with Twitter or Google about content moderation, about individuals, websites, phrases, hashtags to ban? Just yes or no. Do you communicate with Twitter or Google about coordinating your policies in this way?
Senator, we do not coordinate our policies.
Do your Facebook content moderation teams communicate with their counterparts at Twitter or Google?
Senator, I'm not aware of anything specific, but I think it would be probably pretty normal for people to talk to their peers and colleagues in the industry.
It would be normal, but you don't do it?
No, I'm saying that I'm not aware of any particular conversation, but I would expect that some level of communication probably happens. But that's different from coordinating what our policies are or our responses in specific instances.
Well, fortunately, I understand that the task platform is searchable. So will you provide a list of every mention of Google or Twitter from the tasks platform to this committee?
Senator, that's something that I can follow up with you and your team after on.
Well, yes or no, I'm sure you can follow up with the list, but why don't you commit while I've got you here under oath? It's so much better to do this under oath. Will you commit now to providing a list from the tasks platform of every mention of Google or Twitter?
Senator, respectfully, I'm without having looked into this, I'm not aware of any sensitivity that might exist around that. So I don't think it would be wise for me to commit to that right now, but I would be happy to follow.
How many items on the task platform reflect that Facebook, Twitter, and Google are sharing information about websites or hashtags or platforms that they want to suppress?
Senator, I do not know.
Will you provide a list of every website and hashtag that Facebook content moderation teams have discussed banning on the task platform?
Senator, again, I would be happy to follow up with you or your team to discuss further how we might move forward on that. But without
will you commit to it here? Senator Cruz and Senator Lee both asked you for lists of individuals, websites, entities that have been subject to content moderation. You expressed doubt about whether any such information exists, but you've also now said that the task website, you've acknowledged the task platform exists, that it is searchable. So will you commit to providing the information you have logged on the task website about content moderation that your company has undertaken? Yes or no?
Senator, I think it would be better to follow up once I've had a chance to discuss with my team what any sensitivity around that would be that might prevent the kind of sharing that you're talking about. But once I've done that, I would be happy to follow up.
All right. So you won't commit to do it here. We could, of course, subpoena this information, but I'd much rather get it from you voluntarily. But I think let everybody take note that Mr. Zuckerberg has now repeatedly refused to provide information that he knows that he has and has now acknowledged that he has, that Tasks has under oath. Let me switch to a different topic. Mr. Zuckerberg, tell me about Sintra. What is the Facebook internal tool called Sintra?
Senator, I'm not aware of any tool with that name.
Well, let me see if this refreshes your memory.
Okay, so I'm going to stop it right there. There are a couple things here that I want to bring up that I think are noteworthy. Number one, I think it's probably true to some extent that Mark Zuckerberg does not know everything that goes on inside of Facebook. That said, I think he's aware of a lot of it. There are other people inside of Facebook that could probably be brought before Congress that might have a, how shall we say, more granular working knowledge about these programs. Now, the task platform is an internal tool used at Facebook to assess content and assess whether or not they're going to push it, whether or not they're going to shadow ban it, whether or not they're going to throttle it. Whatever it is, that's what Facebook, the task platform, will ultimately do. Now, I would think that they would be working directly with AI so that AI could mine a number of what they would call offensive posts. And then that they would go through those posts. And that as a group, and there is a group, they would determine which way they would want to go with a particular publisher of that post. So Zuckerberg knows about task. It's an internal communication system inside of Google. Now, Sintra, he claims he knows nothing about. Could that be possible? Sure. But that's a really high-level tool. Very, very high-level tool. And Zuckerberg was doing a lot of CYA moments. And this goes absolutely nowhere. And eventually Hawley says, well, this is why we have this issue, we have this problem, and no resolution whatsoever. Now they want to go after things like Breitbart. Do you see what they did? They started with Alex Jones. Whatever you think of Alex Jones, he was the whale. Alex Jones was Moby Dick. And they went after Alex Jones. And once they went after Alex Jones, then they were just going right down the so-called hierarchy. Now they want to ban Breitbart. And I'm not a huge Breitbart fan, but they want to ban Breitbart. They want to ban Bannon. Ban Bannon. They want to ban Parler. I mean, they really want to get rid of it all. All of it. And they will make cases, they will justify it, they will have psychological operations put into place so that there'll be somebody. It was like that guy, Robert Lee Bowers, who was the Chabad temple shooter, who pops up on, 4chan or Reddit, and starts posting like egregiously racist and anti-Semitic stuff. And then not long after that, he's going bang bang in this temple. And to this day, I have not seen nor heard, hide nor hair, of that individual. No trial whatsoever. None. John Ernest, same thing. San Diego, right? Poway. Where's his trial? What's going on with him? How long ago was that? 2 years now? So it's amazing how sometimes they can just, get to a trial like a quarter-mile drag strip. And in other cases, well, we'll get there eventually, if we get there at all. If there's really any there to get to. Anyway, I'm digressing just a little bit. But that's what will happen. You'll have some event, and some guy will be spewing some hateful rhetoric. And the next thing you know, he'll do something hateful in public. And they'll go, see what happened? We've got to ban these things. We're going to ban these things. Look, you want to fight the system, go after the fourth industrial revolution. This is a non-winnable conflict right here. Go high. It is nonpartisan. Try to get people's heads wrapped around that. Okay, that is the best way to get to our current situation. I've assessed it. I have totally assessed it. Save, with the exception of maybe pouring into the streets by millions, which is really not going to happen. And even if people did pour in the streets by millions, and the pouring of the millions was multiracial. Like if you look back on that video footage of what happened in Virginia when they were going to ban rifles, and all of a sudden you had all these people show up. Well, guess what? It wasn't just so-called white people that were there. There were black people that were there too, and other people as well. They didn't like that. And oh, by the way, the Wu flu wasn't far behind that. Now, was it? On the helicopter? Here we go. It's helicopter day. It's the same one. Here you go. There it is. See it? Looks mighty official, doesn't it? Fourth Industrial Revolution. Now, you do have power, believe it or not. Believe it or not. As much as they say that you don't have power, you do have power. Let me show you an example. For all you folks tuning in from Deutschland, actually Germany, Deutschland's Holland. Dusseldorf forced to lift face mask rule after court ruling. The German city of Dusseldorf was forced Monday to lift an order for residents to wear masks against the coronavirus after a citizen successfully sued the blanket rule. The setback for the Western city came as Germany is fighting a surging second wave of COVID-19 with new daily cases reaching record levels almost every other day. Dusseldorf authorities on Wednesday ordered masks in public across the city, with the exception of parks and cemeteries, unless the possibility of encountering other people who are fewer than 5 meters away can be precluded, sort of like the Texas rule. In its ruling, the court called Dusseldorf's order confusing because it did not provide clarity on which conduct is required, while at the same time threatening a fine in case of noncompliance. City authorities said that they would re-examine the wording of their mask order following the ruling. So they're going to go and fine-tune their language. Opposition to strict curbs, including maintaining safe distances or limiting social contacts, has been raising ire. It's been rising in Germany and elsewhere across Europe. A series of court cases favoring plaintiffs had last month toppled bans on hotel stays for domestic travelers from German districts with high prevalence of the virus. Thousands of demonstrators protesting the restrictions also ran riot in the eastern city of Leipzig on Saturday, flinging fireworks and other projectiles at police. Sounds like it was a little bit of an Antifa was kind of getting in on it. It's like, hey, yeah, fuck the mask, fireworks. The violence shocked German leaders, sparking a hail of condemnation and questions over why the local court even allowed the demonstration to proceed when it was clear that the protesters were unlikely to respect rules. So this is kind of Antifa sullying the waters. They're going to turn violent. No, you can't protest. Got it. All authorities involved, including the courts at this moment, have a great responsibility in this accept. So what we have here is we have a story about a guy that wins. Then the story itself becomes a story about how the locals should be, the local government should be refining the language, and then the story shifts to violent protests. There you go. There's your word magic right there for you. But this is actually something I think to be celebrated. That one person said, "Hey, look, inconsistent. How are you going to prove it? How are you going to prove it? Remember, you have more power than you understand or perceive." And the hammer has been saying that you don't. The hammer says you are powerless. I don't care what your skin tone is. You're powerless. That's what the hammer says. And they hammer it over and over and over again until the point where, guess what? You believe it. And then when you believe it, there's nothing left for them to do but to take the sickle, right? To take the sickle and remove your head from your body. That's how, metaphorically speaking, of course. Metaphorically speaking. Don't believe it. Don't believe a lie. Don't believe a lie. Every single one of you, and I mean every one of you. I'm not here to bifurcate or classify or quantify every single one of you. Yes, every single one of you. Even you soulless NPCs, you're in on it too. You have more power than you know. Find one thing in your life that you can invest in, build on, improve, perfect, get good at. Even in the midst of a time where there's social chaos, turmoil, and uncertainty. It's even more important that you make this kind of stand in your own spirit now. Now is the time. It flies in the face of what the world is telling you. The world is telling you you should be scared. You should have some fear, but having some fear and being scared are two different things. Okay? Fear is a natural thing. Being scared it's infantile. Your children are scared. You know? You have to work through that. But that's what they're saying. Don't worry, you don't have any power at all. You have no power against something you cannot see. And we will help you deal with this unseen agent. Don't worry, we got you. Right? We got you. Oh, guess what? You don't have any other power at all. Don't worry, we'll take care of that too. Your economic power is deflated. You don't have a job. Don't worry about that. We'll re-empower you. We'll build better back. Right? Or build back better, whatever the fuck it is. We've got the power and we'll reinsert the power in you. Don't worry about it. See, that is the program, and you want to ditch that program. You want to ditch the program. And right now, commit to the power inside yourself. The power that is far greater than any of these people, far greater than their program, and even far greater than, at times, the interpreters of this power from whatever religion that they profess that they're from, and though sometimes they probably do good work, whatever. It's even greater than that, okay? It's greater than that, and you're a part of that. You're a part of that. You're part of something that transcends even the archonic universe, if you want to dip into the Gnostic realm, right? Because the archons were created as an error out of that power. But there's a power greater than that, right? And you're a part of it. So don't ever forget that. You just affirm and decree that that's inside of you. And don't question it. Don't look back, right? And don't be arrogant. Don't run around and say, I've got the power, you don't, right? That's not how it works. It's not how it works. Don't look back. Just do it. Do it now. All right. Bye for now. I'll be back tomorrow. Maybe my helicopter friends will be around too. Tomorrow is, if I'm not mistaken, what's the date today? 18th. Let's see. So I'll be back tomorrow. And then on Friday, we're going to have Jordan Foltz. Remember Jordan? He's great. And he's deep, he's profound. He's got his finger on the psychic pulse of our times. So he's going to join us for the first hour. And I think that what I'm going to do maybe in the second hour is I may dive into some human design on Friday in the second hour. Now, I'll have an asterisk here and a bit of a caveat. I am not an expert in human design, although I know enough to be conversant and I know enough to walk people through certain things. And I think human design is really important. Again, it's a piece of the puzzle. It's not the whole thing, but it's important. And understanding what your design is, I think, can be very instructive during a time like this. So I'm thinking that that's what we're going to do in hour number 2. Okay. Yeah, you can hit like and do whatever you need to do. If you want to support the show, there's a link there in the show page description. Use your head in order to discern what's real. Your heart said what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix.